I want to start this video off a little differently to how I normally do things. I haven't ever really thanked you all in a video, just in community posts, but I wanted you to hear my voice just saying thank you. Your support never ceases to amaze me, and I really do appreciate you being here with me, all of us being here together. And I also want to thank you for the respect that you give those involved in these cases. The true crime community can sometimes be a little off, I guess that's the only way I can put it, but I feel like the community that we've built here is something really special in the face of the negative and scary things that we learn about. So, welcome back to Case Documentaries. I bring you true crime, disturbing stories and other things that you may later regret knowing, with at least 2 new videos every single week. Please do join the quickly growing Dark Case family by hitting subscribe now and turning on notifications. Our love and respect goes out to all those that knew and loved Tasha. Tasha Lucia was born on April 7th, 1987 in Fairfax, Virginia. But at the age of just 6 months, she moved to Charleston, which became her home. She was described by her family as a beautiful soul, an angel truly loved by many. They said that she loved to live and lived to love. Continuing, her heart, while guarded for strangers, always remained true and open for her family and friends who never doubted her love or loyalty. The family said that she loved the beach ever since she was a young child, letting her feet sink into the warm sand and her face be washed over by the salty sea, somewhere they say was her second home. Her family say when Tasha entered her room, her loving presence soothed your soul, and her beautiful genuine laughter invited you to join in. Where there was Tasha, there was always love, belly-aching laughter and silliness. They stated, "Our world has missed out on a truly amazing woman." On Sunday, February the 10th, 2013, Tasha Lucia was 25 years old. Tasha worked at Locklear's Beach City Grills in Charleston County, South Carolina. Normally reliable and punctual, on this day she wasn't present when her shift started. Co-worker and friend Jessica Nelson realised Tasha was absent and she called her on her cell phone, but there was no answer. As the day drew on, Jessica called her several more times, but still Tasha didn't answer and didn't return her calls. The entire shift passed by, with many continued failed attempts to contact Tasha. Jessica and Tasha's other co-workers were now growing more concerned about where their friend was. So after work, Jessica and a fellow employee went to Tasha's house at 5 o'clock that afternoon. She couldn't ignore her gut feeling that something was amiss, she just couldn't shake it. Tasha didn't live by herself. She resided in James Island in Charleston County, South Carolina, with her partner, Robert Kronsberg. When Jessica and the other co-worker arrived at Tasha's house, they repeatedly knocked on the door, but there was no response to this either. They noticed that the living room window was in fact open. They persevered and were finally able to enter the apartment. Now in the apartment, they heard loud snores coming from one of the bedrooms. They knew right away that boyfriend Robert was home and he was sleeping on the bed. They woke him up and asked where Tasha was, but they couldn't understand what he replied because he was just mumbling, saying nothing of value. They scoured the entire home in search of Tasha after realising that what Robert was saying made no sense, and then they discovered her laying on a bed in another bedroom. She was covered by a sheet. They pulled back the sheet, revealing a large knife plunged into her chest. There was no chance of reviving their friend. Tasha had already passed. The 2 women were shocked and terrified. They fled outside whilst yelling for help and they called 911. Tasha's friends knew about her and Robert's relationship history. This is what originally prompted them to take her work absence so seriously. They knew that he had a history of hitting her. They'd even seen her with bruises in the past, but they never thought he would push it this far. They never believed that their friend Tasha would end up how they found her. The friends were aware that the relationship was poisonous and unstable because they frequently fought. They would break up and then get back together in a seemingly never-ending cycle. Police then arrived and promptly took Robert into custody. Based on the information and evidence gathered, they announced that they were looking for no one else in this investigation. Robert Kronsberg was charged with Tasha's murder. However, Robert entered a not guilty plea. not helping the innocent image that he wished to portray. Robert's cover photo on Facebook was the horrific chainsaw scene from American Psycho.
I grew up actually pretty privileged until I was about 12 years old. My parents had a lot of money, but my father, he had a drug problem, and so I went from living in a mansion to living in a room in the back of someone's house that had a bathroom connected to it. I didn't have very many friends growing up at all, because I think I kind of threw people off. So I was a very sad, very depressed child. So as I grew older, just drugs and alcohol just helped me cope with the thing.
The case went to trial. The prosecution said that Robert and Tasha had an on-off relationship and frequently argued, and that on February the 10th, 2013, one of those fights escalated and tragically led to Tasha's passing. They claimed that Tasha met up with friends on February the 9th, the day before she passed away. The jury saw photos of a happy Tasha that were taken only hours before she passed. The court heard that she had a fun final night on Folly Beach with her friends. That same day, Robert attended work, and afterwards he went to a party. However, the prosecution informed the jury that this did not prevent him from trying to start a text message argument with Tasha. According to her friends, Tasha's behaviour altered after receiving a text from Robert. When they both arrived home, the fight quickly moved from text message to verbal. The jury was told, "See, the defendant was angry. When Tasha got home, he and Tasha argued about her ex-boyfriend, and you will hear in his own words what he did to the person he supposedly cared about." The disagreement then became physical. The prosecution informed the jury he hit her really hard. He hit her because she was yelling for help. According to the prosecution, Tasha's life was taken on February the 10th, somewhere between midnight and 2 a.m, meaning that she could have been laid there for 17 hours whilst her co-workers attempted to phone her. Detective Richard Holmes of the Charleston Police Department testified in front of the jury. He backed up the story that Tasha and Robert got into a fight over her ex-boyfriend and their own intimacy. Therefore, he ended up attacking her as a result. The prosecution continued. What is believed to have happened is Tasha was allegedly strangled and choked, and then shockingly she was beaten with a hammer. Still showing signs of life, Robert still wasn't happy. He went to the kitchen, grabbed a butcher knife and plunged it into her at least 15 times. Later, when her co-workers discovered her, the knife was still inside her. Robert was in bed when police arrived. He seemingly went back to sleep after Jessica and the other co-worker fled the apartment. When the police roused him, he sat upright and had a crazy look in his eyes, according to testimony given to the court. He appeared to be muttering and mumbling. They were unable to understand what he was saying. A bottle of vodka, some marijuana, ibuprofen, and a knife were discovered by the police on the nightstand next to the bed that he was laying in. When authorities discovered Robert, he was covered in blood and wounds on the inside of his arm that appeared to have been self-inflicted. His left wrist had a 3-inch vertical laceration. Robert asserted that he attempted to take his own life twice, but was unsuccessful in both attempts. The court was informed that Robert also confessed to having used cocaine when he was transported to the hospital for treatment. The prosecution presented the jury with an audio recording of what they claimed was Robert's confession. Robert was hospitalized at the time that this was recorded. In the audio clip, Robert is heard admitting that he tried to take his own life after attacking Tasha. Paul Polensky, one of Robert's friends, testified before the court, but it wasn't in his defense. Paul consented to give testimony for the prosecution. They both worked together at a pizza shop in James Island, and the court heard that they were close friends. He claimed that on February the 10th, right after Tasha passed at the hands of Robert, Robert's phone sent him a text message with the words 911 written 4 times. Robert urged Paul to contact him back from the office landline rather than his cell phone. When they spoke, Robert said, "Don't freak out, but I just killed my girlfriend." Paul said that because he had known Robert for a long time and even assisted Robert in finding employment, he assumed Robert was only joking. He had worked with Robert the previous evening and was aware that he attended a party after work, so at first he didn't take it seriously and assumed that Robert was just intoxicated and messing about. He soon understood though that this wasn't a joke. Paul knew Robert and Tasha were bickering that night, but he was unaware of what degree until Robert explained what he had just done. According to Paul's testimony, which offered confirmation of the prosecution's story, Robert claimed on the phone that after hitting Tasha, she started screaming and he tried to choke her to keep her quiet. Robert promised Tasha that if she would stop screaming, he would let her up. According to Paul's testimony, Robert tried to calm her down 3 times, but she wouldn't stop crying, so he grabbed the first thing that was laying next to him. Sadly, the nearest item was a hammer. He used this hammer to strike her repeatedly. Paul said that he did not call the police because Robert had promised to give himself in the next day. The forensic pathologist, Dr. Susan Presnell, testified in court that Tasha's passing was a result of homicide. The jury was shown photos that were taken during the autopsy. Tasha was shown in the photos as having a black eye, a broken nose, and several scrapes and bruises on her face, lip, and neck. Some of the blows appear to have been produced by the hammer. Tasha's chest also showed clear evidence of the attack. The hammer was discovered in the house with Tasha's DNA still on it. The prosecutor told the jury that there should be no room for doubt regarding Robert's guilt and that it would be simple for them to convict him. Prosecutor questioned the jury, if it wasn't murder, what was it? There was no disputing Robert's role in Tasha's passing. The defense, however, stated, this case is going to be about what was going on in his heart that night. And that's what you're going to have to decide throughout the course of this week. The defense argued that Robert did take Tasha's life, but that it actually happened during a heated altercation. Even though Robert and Tasha clashed about Tasha's ex-boyfriend, the defense maintained that her death wasn't the result of murder. It was, in fact, an impulsive act of passion. The defense encouraged the jury to keep their attention solely on the facts and to suppress their emotions. The defense assured the jury that his client was not getting away with anything in this case, and that instead he was being held accountable for the right offence. He said that Robert was simply acting erratically in this instance and there was no malice involved. They said this was all done in a frenzy, an uncontrolled frenzy with alcohol, a frenzy without the benefit of collecting one's thoughts. They said that Robert would not have done this to Tasha if he wasn't inebriated, that on that evening he was powerless to control his own behaviour.
And next thing I knew, she was on the ground and she wasn't moving. Started screaming. I was freaking out. I was throwing things all over the room, and I looked down and there was a knife, and I just stabbed her body like 17 times apparently. But I think that she had already been deceased. I can't be 100% sure.
The jury was informed by the judge that although Robert was charged with murder and they could find him guilty of that charge, they could also take into account the lesser charge of voluntary manslaughter and find him guilty of that charge if they felt it was appropriate given the evidence that they had just heard.
In a frenzy, an uncontrolled frenzy, a frenzy without thought, he makes a decision, and that decision is to grab a 15-inch butcher knife, to go down, get on his knees intimately, face to face with the person he is supposed to care about, and stab. And I am sorry to do this, but that's not it.
Tasha was stabbed at least 11 times.
Stab.
Her mother described what it was like to watch the trial.
Horrific, I guess. Very horrific. Disturbing.
When the judge gave her time to speak after the verdicts, she called Kronsberg evil and asked for the maximum sentence.
For this evil to have the rights of life while I am left to forever grieve for my daughter, unlike an object bought that can be replaced, but a precious gift of life to love for a lifetime, is the cruelest evil of all.
After just 1 hour of deliberation, the jury found Robert guilty of murder, as well as having a weapon whilst committing a violent felony. At that point, Robert started cursing in the courtroom, and he had to be taken out so that he could calm down. He then apologised for taking Tasha away from her mother, Kimberly, saying, "I'm so sorry that I took her away from you." Since this was Robert's first offence, his attorney urged the judge give him a 35-year sentence with a 5-year parole period. The judge heard testimony from Robert's relatives before Judge Roger Young delivered his verdict. They informed the judge that Robert was a troubled individual who had long battled substance abuse. His daughter, his loved ones, and now his freedom had all been taken from him by his addiction. The defence's appeal for a 35-year sentence was rejected by the judge. Speaking directly to Robert, he stated that he did not think it was an act of passion, and that one factor made it obvious that it was not a spontaneous act. You thought she was dead and walked away from her, heard that she was still alive and went back to finish her off. This means that Robert potentially had a chance to save her life. Robert was given a life sentence without the chance of parole. However, he is no longer serving this sentence. Robert Kronsberg was discovered dead in his cell at the Broad River Correctional Institution in Columbia on December 6, 2017. He took his own life. Do you believe justice was served here? Let me know in the comments. Boost the signal of this case by hitting like on the video. Please do join the Dark Case family by hitting subscribe now and turning on notifications for at least 2 new videos every single week. Thank you to all my patrons: David James, Adi Alexander, Karen Jones, Al Palmieri, James Harrington, Faster River, Stacey Krogerus, Summit Chambers and Mona Corona. Please do be careful out there, and I'll see you soon.